Hello, everybody. Welcome to this month's edition of the Wellness Policy. We are here to break down the big news.
Yeah.
All the news. All the news. Well,
We're on Netflix now, as I understand it. I haven't been paying too close
2025,
attention.
January. The deal valued at over $0 billion for 20, 30 years. Welcome, everybody, to the Wellness Policy. Yes, this is the one podcast on this network that I don't think you'll hear any professional wrestling business analysis or anything else whatsoever, unless you choose to surprise me, guys. But we are here instead to talk about faith and everything it entails. First of all, how are you guys doing? Jordan, Neil, welcome.
Neil, you threw up this morning.
I did. The three of us spoke about 24 hours ago, and I was pretty much fine at that point. So I wonder what the cause was of this. But last evening, began to feel a bit queasy, sort of just on the edge of nausea, and went to bed not feeling too well. Woke up this morning, no appetite whatsoever, but I thought I better try something. So I had a bit of toast and water. And
plain toast?
Completely, well, no, a little bit of butter on the toast. And then 20 minutes later, it was hello toast again. Yeah, brutal. Very nice. But like the trooper I am, I'm here, and I actually went into the office as well because there was an in-person meeting where I was required. Normally, I would have phoned in sick or just worked from home. But
you answer to people, Neil?
Oh yes.
Oh yeah. Wow.
Several people, yeah. There's a line management chain all the way up to director level I have to answer to, Jordan. And then there's you and Wai, sort of above that.
Of course.
And John.
I'm sorry to hear that, and thank you for being here. Keep us updated about your condition maybe throughout the podcast, So I guess we know how Neil's doing. How are you doing, Jordan?
I'm okay. Wait, when's the last time you threw up?
It's a good question. I feel like it's been a while, honestly. I'm really having a tough time.
I threw up like maybe 10 weeks ago, which was the first time in at least 5 years. It's rare for me to throw up.
And what brought that on?
Just like some sort of illness of some kind. And as soon as I threw up, I felt significantly better. Which is often the case for me. I think it's just getting the poison out of your body. But like that's not something that's common for me as a response to illness, to throw up. And I don't drink much at all. So that's rare as well. But dude, like throwing up is a violent experience.
Absolutely. It was, I can't remember the last time I was ill where that was a component. There's been, don't want to put our listeners off right at the beginning, but there's been the other sort of end of the digestive distress.
Diarrhea,
happened.
Neil?
Yeah, I think that's what it's called. But yeah, you're right. I mean, this morning, it was a very violent kind of. And
you're such a polite person. It's hard for me to imagine you even make vomiting with that noise. Is how I'm going to envision it.
It reminds me of like Stan from South Park.
In what way?
Okay.
In what way, Neil?
Yeah.
Because that's what he used to do around, the girl he liked.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. A 20-year data reference, perhaps. But the thing that I guess I came to appreciate when I did throw up a few months ago was like, not only is it this like violent reaction, at least in my experience, but this idea of you're completely letting go or losing control of your bodily systems because like you can hold on to it, but it's like a sneeze. It's at some point you just let go and it comes out however it's going to come out, and it's just an odd human experience.
Yeah, agreed.
But it's a great sort of fail safe, isn't it? That's built in within us. Like if your body doesn't want something, it's just like it automatically hits the eject button for you.
Yeah, our bodies are brilliantly designed. But not always the most pleasant of experiences.
No, particularly afterwards, because you're still feeling a bit ick, but you want the acidy, rotten taste out of your mouth. So I was plugging some mouthwash, but that was gross, and.
Did you
Anyway.
eat something bad, or like, you know, like, do you have any suspicion about what might have brought it on?
Either something I've eaten, but I don't know what that could be. Looking back on my sort of food intake over the last 24, 48 hours, or just some weird ass, tummy bug that's very short lived. Because I do feel okay now. My voice might be a little bit croaky, but
Will you vomit live on the wellness policy if the time
do
comes?
anything for this show.
Oh, I was about to offer money, but look at
He's
you
gonna
giving it all
puke.
away. Dickie Bird coming in the comments. We are live on Post Wrestling YouTube saying, "Did you know horses can't vomit?" I did not know that, but
Did
Wai,
not
I
know
believe I believe you knew that, Wai.
I absolutely did not. No, I don't really know much about horses, nor their digestive systems. That's fascinating and unfortunate, you know? Like, how does a horse get rid of a hangover?
Yeah.
Huh. Well, maybe that will be February's episode. Speaking of, this is the fourth year of the wellness policy.
You're
So
kidding.
I'd like to offer you a congratulations, Wai. Neal, you have not contributed the entire time, but 4 years, that's like kind of a big deal.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah, we started in 2021, January. So we've done it for 3 full years. This would be the start of
gotcha.
year 4.
Into year 4.
So it's not a 4th anniversary. I mean, we passed 3. We've kind of, or is it a 4-year anniversary? What are we talking?
I don't know how that works.
3rd anniversary?
I think we turned 3.
WWE screwed me up.
Yeah,
my accounting here, but okay. Well, congratulations. Any cause for celebration? That's quite a streak. Did you think that this would last this long?
No, not at all. I mean, you seemed like ready to jump ship that first summer from memory.
I'm always ready to jump ship. No, I'm kidding. No,
We worked through it though.
This has been a wonderful experience, as I'm sure every single week, every single month it is, and I don't imagine this month will be any different because we are here to talk about the topic of faith, and not just from what I gathered from your sort of suggestion, Jordan, not just religion, because we actually did an episode about that, but this is more sort of like faith in general. Care to explain maybe the genesis of this particular topic?
Well, I think faith is very close to the concept of belief. Like, what do we believe individually as people? Especially, what do we believe to be true or probable about things that cannot be proven? Let's say. I mean, look, Post Wrestling has covered a lot in the past 16 hours, and y'all thought that they covered it all. I mean, we have like the top star in Japan leaving his home promotion and his home country. You got look, fucking Ivar just like showing like how underutilized he has been. In addition to one of the most famous people in the entire world joining the board of directors, and you have a historic content deal for the most prestigious pro wrestling television property of all time. You think it's been all covered. But we haven't covered on Post Wrestling what happens when you die.
Are you sure they didn't discuss that on Nick Khan on Pat McAfee this afternoon?
I've yet to listen to it, so I can't confirm that to be true or not. However, we will be comprehensive here and covered ourselves, perhaps the greatest question of them all. And the punchline is, I think, we don't know. So thus, that's where the concept of faith comes in. And I think that's a very interesting topic for me personally, especially since my father died less than a year ago. And that is something that I have been struggling with more than I ever had to. Fortunately, the first 38 years of my life, I've not really been smacked in the face with this as hard to be, I guess, forced to confront and wrestle with this topic. So it certainly brings up my own existential dilemma, we could say, but also this idea of where's my dad? Is he okay? The conversation, or at least the topic, really stirred within me in the many months after my father's death, where I still get people reaching out to me in the complete spirit of kindness and love and support to me. And they often say things like, he's in a better place. And I appreciate when anyone would say something like that to me. However, I'd be lying if I said there wasn't something about that that kind of, I don't want to say bugged me, but stirred something within me, you know, like, because my natural response, and I don't say this to people because I know they're just trying to be nice, but if I'm being really honest, my response is, well, how do you know? And the answer is, well, they have faith that that's true, or that's likely true. And for me, I guess you can describe it a crisis of faith. And I guess part of it is I don't even know what I have faith in. I don't know exactly what I believe. And this conversation might be one of the more committed or detailed and also public opportunities to wrestle with that question. Because I guess I have a sense that he's in a better place, that we all go to a better place. That's nice to believe, but it's also hard for me to like get over the hump and just have complete blind faith and just a solid conviction that that is the case. And I'm certainly curious how you guys think about this stuff, and if you ever think about this stuff.
Well, like you, Jordan. I mean, I guess you know, I've been very fortunate in that I haven't really had to kind of deal with this. I mean, the most I feel like I've kind of tried to process it myself is maybe when a grandparent died when I was younger, and I think like I must have been like 10 or something, and maybe at that age, that was probably a lot more difficult for me to process at that point. And I think it's not even something I ever spoke to anybody else about, but I just think internally within myself. Like I never grew up as a part of any sort of like, you know, organized religion with my family. I consider myself like, you know, at best like maybe agnostic, you know, and maybe even a little atheist, like, you know, so I never really kind of like subscribed to any sort of formal sort of I don't know, system of like faith. But just I think within myself and I think my own level of like comfort and reasoning at the age of 10, I very much took to almost like having this sort of like spiritual dialogue with her, like with my grandmother, that I never spoke to actually, like when she was even alive, just because of the language barrier and because like by that point she wasn't very communicative, just due to health and everything. But like I at that age found comfort or at least understanding in being able to I don't know, just maybe look to her as some sort of symbol toward of like either something good, you know, or just a representative of like my ancestry. Um, but I personally feel like perhaps it's this type of thing where it is whatever you are willing to make it be, you know. I don't really like to call it a placebo. I think would be insulting, and I don't think it's that. I think but even a placebo like has real scientific sort of like I don't know, benefits, right?
Yeah.
And this is probably way more complex than that, and I really don't mean to like, but I just simply mean even if we can't prove it, and we're not going to prove it on this edition of the wellness policy, I think there are real beneficial effects to whatever somebody chooses to believe about the afterlife if it helps them, you know?
Yeah. And part of my curiosity is just how we individually or as collective groups of people come to form these beliefs. Do we question or check these beliefs as we get older and ask ourselves, where did this come from? Is this still helpful to me or not? I mean, this is much of the work that I do with the clients I work with on a daily basis. And many of us form these beliefs through some sort of organized religion or wisdom tradition. So Wei, you yourself, you're saying that wasn't a significant influence, or maybe very, very little influence growing up for you. I grew up Jewish, but for me, that has always been more of a cultural influence and not much of a spiritual or religious influence. I do not turn to Judaism to inform me on like the answers to life's greatest unanswerable questions, we could say. Neal, I'm curious for you, has any sort of religious thought been an influence on you?
Not particularly, and it's similar to Wai's experience in that, you know, I'm from a particular culture, and that is predominantly a Christian one. But my parents were not churchgoers. Me and my brothers, we were never really exposed to the sort of Sunday school tradition, or what a lot of people have right from very young age, going to church to hear a sermon, you know, and be part of that community. And therefore, I mean, I've been exposed to it over the years through school and so on, but it never really made sense to me as I grew up and came to understand that it was an entire kind of system of beliefs that you can't really choose from. It's kind of like, here is the word, you know, and I guess I probably rebelled a little against that at some age, but have over time cultivated what I would describe as my own spirituality. It's kind of, you know, people who are a devout Catholic, for example, would, I'm guessing, not really agree with my philosophy, which is to choose almost what works for me. I have lost people over the years. I lost a childhood friend when he was 17. He had an accident in the northern part of Ireland. There's the sea is a very rough. It's really the North Sea at that point, and he had an accident, fell off a sea wall, and drowned. And that was my first real sucker punch. Kind of, what do I do with this? I can't understand what's happened, how this could be allowed to happen, that type of thing. I don't really want to dwell on that, but you know, it was a very, you know, I'm 19, he's 17. That's a bit of a punch, you know, to the stomach. Grandparents have gone, but very thankfully, you know, both my parents are still alive, and my siblings, and you know, Jordan, when I hear you talk about your dad, in some degrees, it's kind of triggering is a strong word, but I do wonder, that's going to be a really tough, clearly, it's going to be an extremely tough experience, and I know that it's coming. I don't like to dwell on the fact that it's coming, but it's coming. And how I deal with that, I don't really know. I've kind of come up with my own, as I say, system of what I'll tell you what, I do believe that there's more to human beings than flesh and blood. I think that who we are in an individual sense is more than just kind of a collection of memories and brain synapses flying.
Just pure biology.
Yeah, I think that there's a spiritual, call it what you want, the soul, the life force, whatever. I feel like I've come to the conclusion, without evidence, because none of this can have evidence, that exists. And therefore, I like to believe, that's kind of the best I can do, I like to believe that can continue. And therefore, the people that we've lost in what we can sort of experience in life, are still with us in some way. And that's about as sophisticated as it gets, because, you know, some organized religions will have very clear teaching on how it all works. You might spend some time in purgatory, you know, and then ascend to heaven and all of that kind of stuff. And that I just cannot get on board with, because it just feels like it goes back to your original question of, well, how do you know? And when you get to that kind of detail, it just doesn't ring true to me anymore. Whereas the more basic kind of philosophy I've outlined, well, that does work for me. And it might be a self-comforting kind of thing. It may not be true, but it feels true to me.
You and I are very aligned in how we're thinking about this stuff. I shared with both of you yesterday, I think is the first time for you, Wai, a Facebook ad that I received on my phone hours, maybe 6 hours after my dad died. And it was the first ad that came up as I opened the Facebook app on my phone. And it was from the grocery store, Lidl. And I already had a belief that spirit, life, the essence of who we are as individuals, like, does not cease to exist once our body fails us and we die. I have had a strong belief for much of my life, certainly much of my adult life, that there is more to this than this. And whether that's, you call it ghosts or spirits or whatever it may be, like, I believe in that potential or possibility. But this was like a very real, compelling experience about 6 hours after my dad died that gave me a sense of belief that he's still there in some way. And I shared the ad with you guys, and it was.
Do you mind if I put it up?
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. So if you're not watching on YouTube, he died, I think, maybe weeks before Easter. So the creative of the ad has a Easter theme to it with chocolate bunnies in a basket. But the creative is fucking awful. Like, it doesn't make sense to me.
It's almost nonsensical.
Right. So you have one of the Easter bunnies saying, "We lost Steve." My dad's name was Steve. And then I guess it's pointing, it's not even pointing at one of the bunnies, or it might be just pointing at nothing in particular. And it's answering saying, "I'm right here," with an exclamation point. And the only way that I could interpret that was that that's my dad communicating with me. As I shared with you guys yesterday, I don't think AI, or whatever terminology you would use, is sophisticated enough yet to listen to my conversations via my phone, pick up the sense that someone named Steve is gone, and then be able to, like, for like Meta, Facebook, to utilize that information and then pass the buck off to Lidl to create a custom ad for me. Like, I don't think that's the case. So my only conclusion is that must be my dad. And so that was like and that was by far the clearest. And at this point, one of the few examples of, like, oh yeah, he's still kicking around somewhere trying to let me know, like, he might be gone, but he's not gone. And I found a lot of
you to shop at Lidl.
Perhaps, and I have not yet. And so if my father is watching on YouTube, very sorry, but like, fuck Lidl. Like, I don't need to give them my business. What have they done for me? I like, and that gave me comfort. It was freaky, sure, but it gave me a sense of comfort, and it gave me like a further conviction, or strengthened my belief that when we die, this is not the end. Now, when people say to me, "Oh, like, your dad's looking down on you and he's in a better place," like, again, my natural curiosity is, well, how do you know? It's nice to believe. I'm not saying I don't outright, like, not believe that. It's just, I don't know. And it's also a really, for me at least, a morbid yet very interesting topic to chat about. Mm-hmm. Wait, when you die, are you going to heaven?
I don't know.
What do you believe?
If he isn't, there's no chance for any of us, I think.
This is true.
To be honest, I don't know if I've really given it so much thought. And I don't even know if it's like a yearning, like it's not necessarily a goal.
What do you think of this whole heaven and hell concept?
I mean, I think it's a great sort of idea. You know, it makes sense, and it's a great way to perhaps police, or at least like inform how we should be acting down here. You know, it just basically kind of gives us a reason to always be a good person, I suppose, beyond the sort of intrinsic benefits of that.
So I don't in full disagree, but where I would push back is, what about for the, I'm sure, many millions of people that live the one thing that we know to be true, which is our life as it is now. Many people live their entire lives in fear of the possible outcome of hell, or like infinite purgatory.
Sure.
Is that helpful?
It depends how much you succumb. I guess how much the fear is impacting your day to day. You know, how much it's stressing you out, I suppose.
Mm.
I mean, is it all that different, in my opinion, to like threatening a child that they're going to be put into timeout if they don't behave?
But there's an end to timeout.
Permanent timeout, which is the worst timeout of all.
Were you ever like punished as a kid?
Not with timeout.
Yeah,
No.
my parents tried maybe once, and it lasted about 5 minutes on a step.
But it's like, I guess in some ways it can come across like it's a threat. You know, like if you don't be good, if you do these bad things, you're going to be in the worst place imaginable.
Yeah, but also, and this comes, like, broadens, I guess, the conversation around the nature of belief, how we come to form beliefs. Neal, to use you as an example, you could have been susceptible, especially being raised in a predominantly Christian culture, that, well, accepting your sexuality is like equivalent to like a punishable crime.
Yeah,
that's fucked up.
It is fucked up. Yeah, and it's one of the reasons I'm grateful that I wasn't raised in a strict, here is our set of beliefs. Here is what this verse says about homosexuality or something like that. Therefore, you know, you're in a state of sin and need to, I don't know. But there are some extreme examples of conversion therapy and the like, which have a religious basis, which, you know, I obviously, you know, I hope I don't even need to say it. I deeply oppose and think is wrong and cruel and all the rest of it. That said, there are people I know and some in my family who are born again Christians, but they just happen to be able to reconcile that with, you know, I guess some of the Old Testament stuff, just they're all right to kind of dispose of, you know, and I think a lot of my Bible knowledge isn't brilliant, but I think some of the most, you know, a man shalt not lie with man as he shalt with woman, or something. You know, I'm fucking this up, sorry, but it's something like that. That's in, you know, Leviticus or something, and it's alongside a whole mess of other stuff about you're not allowed to wear different kinds of yarn together. Divorce is off the table. I forget. There's a shellfish, I think, is in the same bracket as all of this. You know, these are all stonable, I think, offenses, you know, in the Old Testament. So, you know, I think.
My point, sorry, Neal. My point is that a lot of people believe these things, and I'm curious about just how we all come to believe what we believe. Like, we are designed to create a mental map or model of how this works. I think that's probably the only way to try to create some illusion of order in the ostensible chaos of the nature of existence. And we are a tribal people, and so we want to fit in with the tribe. And now, especially with the internet, there are infinite tribes to feel connected to. And each culture, each tribe, like, has their own values and belief systems.
Free speech, Jordan. Free speech.
Which would be one. And to me, it's interesting how perhaps, you know, like, a lot of people just be like, well, this is what it is. This is the truth. Well, okay, well, that's your truth. That's your, but where did that truth come from? You know, like I think that's interesting. So like Wei, for instance, okay, so it wasn't a religion that kind of, but they all point to, I guess, morals, let's say. So like, where do you think that came from then?
I feel like I could give you a pretty easy answer for that. For
Please.
me, it would have been through American television and
Interesting.
just kind of pop culture, I think. Which maybe like in and of itself, like especially in the West, is very much sort of like Christianity based. At least like when I was growing up watching, I don't know, Disney movies and just kind of I don't know, sitcoms and everything. It's like typically you see like a Christian household, and I mean concepts that are perhaps I don't know, more attuned to sort of like a Western religious mindset, like heaven and hell, or Christmas even, or Easter, like all these things. So that probably like through osmosis, gave me like a pretty, I don't know, sort of like base level understanding of like a Christian concept of the afterlife. Um so yeah, that if it's anything, it's probably that, because it definitely wasn't through like just conversations or anything like that.
Neil, was Danny Tanner your surrogate father as well?
No, I don't even get the reference. I'm sorry, Jordan. There is.
Wait, hold on, hold on.
How rude.
You don't. Yeah.
Is it Full House? No.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. Yeah. Not huge in the UK or Ireland. It's it's really weird because we've had these discussions before, and this is a tangent. People, it's not really a matter of faith, or is it? But there's a lot of American sitcoms, huge in the UK. Going back to, suppose, in the 1980s, Cheers, Saved by the Bell, all of those sorts of things. But Full House, I don't ever recall being in a prominent position in our schedules.
And not to say Full House was really all that Christian. I mean, maybe that was. I don't even really necessarily remember if there were any sort of religion whatsoever, but the concepts of heaven and hell, I feel like are almost sort of like outside of religion, or at least like they make for good television episodes, and or at least like scenes perhaps, and they don't even have to be directly tied to religion itself.
Here's my take on heaven and hell, and obviously it's all in how you interpret these ancient stories or texts or wisdom, if that word resonates. I guess for me, the way that I've come to make sense of this, it's not so much of a literal scenario of what happens when you die. For me, it's more as, what is your experience on Earth going to be like? So if you live in more of like the Jesus way, where you're not essentially going to be a piece of shit, right? Like you don't steal from people, you don't lie to people, etc., then you will be living a more heaven-like existence. If you are a piece of shit, well, call it karma or whatever, then your lived existence will be more hell-like. To me, that I can get on board with that. But when I start imagining, and obviously I'm being like inflammatory now, but the imagery of like pearly gates and some like old white man in a cloud with a beard, with like a list, basically looking you up on the list and saying whether we accept you or not. And the imagery of Satan in hell, which is like physically below the earth. Like, come on.
Yeah, but you can't say that. You don't know, Jordan. Okay, none of us have died. All right.
But many people with full conviction will say that they do know. And that's interesting,
and that's
to me.
faith. You're exactly, and this is what we were talking about, right? What drives somebody to be, I guess, I don't even know if sure is like sort of the thing you would describe them as, but like confident, I guess, that these things are out there.
And I understand the function of many of these things. Like, it is perhaps more uncomfortable to not know, or to admit that you don't know. So like faith or blind faith, there is a level of comfort with that. There's a sense of order. There's a sense of predictability and security. And if I do this and I am that, then I will be fine in the end. That's nice.
So in a roundabout way, I know this was maybe a proposed topic that we didn't really latch onto, but is it not, is faith not maybe another form of commitment? we are choosing to commit to sort of an unknown result, uh, even if we can't be sure that the destination is going to be there.
Of course. I mean, to use the most extreme of examples, I mean, like, people will literally kill themselves in an effort to kill other people that they deem evil, uh, on the belief that there's a promise that they will be rewarded in the afterlife. Like, that is one hell of a fucking commitment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But also a very extreme example to show us like how powerful the nature of faith and belief is, to the point that we're willing to take ourselves out of this one thing that at least we can look at and objectively seems kind of real and true, which is our aliveness.
Hard to really kind of understand, that like the huge scope of like how somebody might be, I don't know, put into that sort of thinking from birth, I would assume. Really, really hard to say. Uh, does anybody in the Post Wrestling Cafe perhaps want to chime in? We have the excuse me, call-in link that's out there right now in all of the proper sources. I'll even put it out in the chat room right now if anybody wants to call. But before we go in on calls, like, do you guys have any more sort of thoughts you want to just kind of keep between the three of us?
I'm quite interested, Wai, in that you said your philosophy is at best kind of agnostic and getting on for, or whatever phrase you used, atheism. So I'm wondering, is your instinct in conversations like this to think there's probably a scientific explanation for all of this and or a bunch of coincidences? Is that how you tend to see the world and life and all of that?
Yes, the answer is yes. Like in my current state in life right now, if I hear like Jordan described the Lidl ad, I'm more willing to think that there is sort of like reasonable coincidence that something like that might have occurred. That he would see an ad referencing like a nonsensical, really nonsensical ad referencing his dad's first name just hours after his dad's passing. I'm more willing to believe that, because the alternative, I don't think I'd just be able to really process. So that's where I'm at with this right now. But I'm also like, if I was sort of like if I had lived that experience like through Jordan, my mind might be completely different,
Yeah.
For me, it feels less dystopian to believe that it was my father's doing. Because that's some fucked up shit to prey upon in the name of marketing.
It is a very weird ad. There isn't even room for another rabbit underneath the...
Yeah, it's not like they're not even making it obvious that there's a rabbit underneath it. And even if there was a rabbit underneath, what like, how is this supposed to make me want to shop at Lidl or buy Favorina?
Well, it clearly did not work on me.
No.
And I have opportunities to shop there. But
and look at the caption. This is for your friend who disappears.
Yeah, I should have clicked see more to see what else they had. But maybe my dad would have appeared.
Like, what is this? Like, what are they going for? Like, what is the message?
I don't know. And like, I Googled, like, I typed in this copy and Lidl, and nothing came up. So yeah, I was wondering, like, was this an ad that was used? And I mean, perhaps others saw this, but dude, it's really hard to believe that others would have seen this, because it sucks. It's not good.
It's not good. Even the W is not an uppercase W there in velocity. Yeah. I know
that's a good point.
I know it is a brand.
Proof that
I've heard of Favorina. Could be.
Interesting. Hey,
what about faith in humanity, or the goodness of people and so on? That can be tough sometimes when you see what's going on in the world. But I tend to think that I have a lot of faith in the goodness of the people that I choose to be in my circle of friends, for example.
I choose to believe that people are inherently good, and maybe like good is simply about I don't know what like survival for most people, and I truly feel like we improve our chances of survival if we make sure everybody is alive. I at least that's just kind of my very simple thinking.
Sure.
But I think there's an inherent good in everybody, and maybe we're just approaching it all in different ways that might conflict with each other.
I have a basic faith in the goodness, the decency in people. I might be paraphrasing, but MLK Jr., the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. Like, so we will experience a lot of fucked up shit done at the hands of our fellow human beings, but over time, bigger picture, we as a collective human race, like we improve, we get better.
And I think history shows that, Jordan, doesn't it? I mean, it's, yes, there are terrible conflicts going on right now, and there is cruelty, and there are awful things happening, and it's not like there's no crime or anything like that. But if you like, even just from school history lessons, the absolute barbarity that used to take place in hanging, drawn, and quartering people with a crowd who would turn up to watch, and all of that kind of stuff. The barbarity associated with some religions have been there, as all, the Crusades, the Romans, they had their planetary gods and all of that. So yeah, I think that I think you're right. We are always improving. It's slow. We'd love it to be better. Just look at the comment section of certain YouTube videos, for example, and you'll see some of the worst of humanity. But
I mean, they think that they like people you're referring to, of course, many of the comments on our Sean Strickland videos, but the people that are choosing to comment on those videos believe that they are doing good, believe that they are trying to improve the human race.
Some of them perhaps, like some just like troll to troll or shit post to shit post, but I do believe that many people like that feel like they are acting in good faith.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's open it up here to some callers. I'm very curious to get some of your thoughts on everything that we've discussed so far, and feel free to introduce perhaps angles to this discussion that we haven't explored yet. Let's first of all go here to Corey. Welcome back to the show, Corey.
Hey guys, hope you're all doing well.
Hey, nice to hear from you.
Hey, Corey.
Great to hear another edition of the Wellness Policy. So, when it comes to faith, and I was kind of mulling this over before the episode after when I heard the topic for this month's episode. And as I was thinking about it, and as I was hearing the discussion today, the one thing that came to my mind is that in my life, and when a lot of people I know talk about faith, it's always in relation to death or adversity. And I don't think that that's I don't think that that's unintentional. I think that especially for a lot of people I know who are not necessarily religious, faith, religion, it's a set of guidelines, or maybe just like a thing that exists, a structure that exists that helps us make sense of, in my opinion, a world that inherently does not care about us, a world that can be very cruel. My grandfather died last month, and in the Jewish faith, this all happens fast. If someone dies, you immediately set up a funeral. Within like 2 days, we had the funeral and we had people gather. It was very fast. And then after, we have a thing called Shiva, which is you leave your doors to your house open and invite people in, and they just have food and sit with the people who are in mourning. And I think about my relationship to Judaism a lot, mostly when it comes to death or any kind of adversity. When I was a little kid, what I my grandmother, she was very ill. She was dying. I didn't really have any kind of conception of God other than that it's the being that controls everything, and if you pray to it, good things will happen. I didn't see God like this kind of like benevolent force. I saw it as like the fucking bank. Like you're taking out a loan at a bank. So I would go into like the bathroom like in a panic, and I'd be thinking to myself like, okay, look, here's what I'll do. I will stop lying to my parents about not doing my homework if you just let my grandma not fucking die. I was under the impression that even as a kid, I didn't necessarily like buy into like absolute altruism or benevolence. I always saw it as some kind of exchange, even if like what I was doing, like not lying to my parents, that's a pretty good thing to do, like lying's a bad thing. But like as an impetus for someone to not die is a little like, ooh, yeah, that's a strange thing. But other than that, faith is not a factor in my life. Especially like after a certain age, I stopped having these sort of thoughts in my head of like, I must do this as a form of penance or as a pay it forward so that things bad that are bad don't happen in my life. Simply just doing things for myself with the assurance in myself that things are going to be all right. The faith in myself that things can work out if I put my mind to it. That is where I really ended up. But over and over again, when faced with death, faced with adversity, I talk with my family. I had a very like candid talk with some of my cousins when we were sitting Shiva for my grandfather's, my grandmother's death. Geez, like Judaism is only a factor in my life when people die, and it's a beautiful thing when people come together to care for one another. They're the oldest people in my family. They're the people that still like know the traditions, know the prayers, can read Hebrew fluently. They're going to eventually die. And then what happens? I think about that a lot, especially when it comes to the communal aspects of my family.
Sorry, Corey, you mean what happens to these traditions?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think it's sad, in a lot of ways, that like, that these kind of beautiful things can be lost, but at the same time, it's like, it's not a factor in my life. So I try to reconcile these a lot, especially as I get older, when I realize like, I'm going to be losing a lot more people in the future.
Yeah.
In my culture, it's very similar. I mean, there are a lot of traditions that are going to die out with my generation that we just wouldn't, like, even something as simple as like going for like a family sort of dim sum, lunch. Like it's not going to be as frequent. But does that maybe spur you to perhaps learn more and so that you could possibly uphold these traditions if you truly feel like you're going to feel that sense of loss without having them?
I don't know. I'll be perfectly honest. I don't know. I'm so consumed with my day to day that I never think about my faith until I'm faced with adversity. And that's the whole thing. And that's what I found so interesting about the conversation leading up to this, is that faith is only ever really discussed for most people I know when it deals with the absolute worst things life can throw at you, the inherent cruelty that is being alive in a world that is not perfect.
Yeah. I totally understand. And maybe like me not having this sort of like devotion to anything or even thinking about faith all that much in my life, maybe be as a result of me not facing a level of adversity that I think maybe would naturally push me towards something like that. I mean, I spoke to my brother recently who is a born again Christian, and he is so different from me in so many ways. He believes in like things that I just simply can't really accept, and just even like weird sort of karmic things that I think he'll put a lot more stock into than I ever will. But he, tells me that he's also like maybe faced a lot more sort of like health challenges, and finding a religion was sort of like one of the things that really kind of brought him out of like some very dark places. And so I can't really begin to understand sort of his perspective of where it's come from, but I can also understand why. I'm just trying to reason out loud why perhaps I haven't,
Maybe the way you've developed like your own sense of resilience to difficult experiences, like a global pandemic, for instance. It doesn't sound like losing the job at Fight Network was this like awful experience for you, but for some it would be, like losing their livelihood and the sense of security that that comes with for some people. Like perhaps you just have already resources or ways of conceptualizing your experiences that doesn't put you into a crisis mode where you start grasping for something such as faith.
I'm not really sure. Again, like it's hard to be able to say like what is sort of like that awful event that might sort of like, I don't know, push you towards that direction. And I guess I feel lucky in that I haven't really experienced anything that bad in my life so far that would push me there. But I guess like maybe I'm interested to hear from you, Jordan, because like prior to your dad's passing, I mean, you mentioned like going through 38 years of your life and not really kind of experiencing so much death in your family, but in the time before your father's passing, like how much were you into spirituality or just the concept of faith?
Very much so into spirituality. And for me, like, do I believe in God? Like, yes, whatever that means. And for me, like when I use a word or term such as God, it's this idea of a oneness, a unifying spirit or energy that exists within and without like everything. Like I have a belief that all of this, whatever all of this means, is interconnected in some way. And that gives me a sense of spirituality where it's not just pure individualistic ego. My actions affect other people and vice versa.
I mean, and that goes directly into the sort of heaven and hell dynamic, especially in the way you explain it. Heaven and hell isn't, to me, it's not a place, but it is a way to look at the way your actions affect the world around you. Mm-hmm. It is, like live virtuously or you will, it's karma, it's karma. For every action, there is an equal but opposite reaction, if we're talking in complete science terms. But the fact that your decisions don't exist in a vacuum, it has an effect on other people.
And do I know this to be for certain? No, but I have a faith in that because at least to me, it seems reasonable enough. And it also seems helpful to me to believe that.
Yeah.
Corey, sorry for your loss. I'm wondering, because we sat Shivatu for 2 days for my dad. What about that process for you did you find valuable or helpful or meaningful?
For me, whenever this, because I have sat Shiva, unfortunately, over the last couple of years when it comes to members of my extended family. It's really just being able to, whether it's me at someone else's house or someone else at my house, it's the family being a factor in healing. A lot of it really has to do with my relationship with my family, people who I don't necessarily spend that much time with, even though we're in relative proximity to each other. I live maybe 30 to 40 minutes away from most of my cousins. it's the communal aspect of it. It's the and it's not necessarily a sort of obligation thing. Like some people didn't show up to Shiva, some people did, but it's the fact that it's knowing that people care. It's knowing that people will stick their neck out for you to come and just sit with you, even if you're a fucking mess, even if you're not, that they will be there because they know that when your ass is up against the wall, when the world is pointing a gun at your head, that they will be right next to you to help you.
Agreed. Did you cover the mirrors, for instance?
We did not cover the mirrors. A lot of it was very hastily planned, and so we kind of got there and just sat down and just really wanted to just take a load off. We didn't really adhere to. We're not the greatest Jews in the world, but
But does that make you a bad Jew necessarily? You know what?
No, it doesn't.
Because from my understanding, Jews or the Jewish faith or belief, it's not a particularly judgmental. It's kind of like what works for you. And again, this is the way that I've been taught Judaism. This is the way that I choose to practice Judaism, we could say. So in let's say a more traditional Jewish practice, you cover the mirrors. Do I know exactly the wisdom or the point of that? Not necessarily. I think something to do with not seeing your reflection. Maybe it's an ego thing. I don't know, to be honest. My family did not do that. Your family, Corey, did not do that. But you guys took from the tradition what seemed like helpful to you. And I suspect that as the older people in your family die, you as a younger generation, like that's what you guys will do too. Just and it may not be so like Jewish, but it's taking from what you guys learned and keeping what seems relevant. And I think that's what we all do. And that's what all cultures do. And that's also why some cultures are a lot more dogmatic or fear-based in their ruling, because I guess there's more of a fear that like the tradition must endure in some fixed way, we could say. But I don't know, like the world continues to change. And I think there's certainly foundational wisdom in a lot of wisdom tradition. Like we are human beings going through the human experience. What will likely not change, at least in our lifetime, is that like, yeah, we're born and we die, like things like that. But the nature of like our lives and customs do change. And I think a flexible faith to me seems reasonable.
Definitely, because at the end of the day, you yourself have to be flexible in what is ultimately an inflexible world. The entropy of the world does not necessarily care about you, but what you can do is care about others. And that's ultimately the backbone of my faith. It is the ability for me as a person to overcome the inherent entropy and chaos of life and to do good by other people I know, to do the same. And hopefully it's all reciprocated. And that is the beginning, middle, and end of everything that I feel on a day-to-day basis.
That resonates a lot with me, Corey, what you've just said. I think, like I described earlier on, a kind of a pick and choose kind of philosophy that I've managed to cobble together over the years. And it's more to do, I think, with other people than with the relationship with God. I don't really have a concept of God. It may, if anything, it's closer to Jordan's, which is that if God exists, it's some sort of manifestation of just absolutely everything that exists, and we're all part of that. We're made
Neal,
of stars.
Do you ever communicate like with that internally? Like
No, I don't pray, if that's not in the traditional way at all. I think I sometimes my mind will go places, but not in any kind of Our Father kind of sense.
Like it doesn't feel like a relationship.
No. Okay. No. For me, it's more about other people, and I suppose where I'm coming from is, I mean, Corey, you seem like a really kind and decent person. So, to me, that I have a hard time with that just being a utilitarian concept. Like I like to be good and kind and thoughtful to my friends, but I don't ever really think it's because I want something back from them, and it'll be paid back or whatever, I like to think that instinct to be a good person and to try to understand other people and where they're coming from, that there's more to it than just wanting reciprocation, I guess. But again, the through line of all of this is that it's a mystery. We don't know.
Thank you so much, Corey, for being here and for carrying on the conversation.
Have a good one, guys.
Thanks, Corey.
Thanks, Corey.
There he is, Mr. Corey, with his shoulders out and the Aphex Twin tank top on full display.
Guns out.
Love that.
Let's go, keep on here with our calls, and let's go to Hansi. Welcome, Hansi.
Can you guys hear me?
Hansi, look at you. You're
Hansi.
still in that strip club, it looks like.
I was gonna change it to like heaven or hell and just say that was from there, but I didn't get enough time, whatever. But I used to be like religious because I thought it was like like the traditional like beliefs of like religion, whatever. 'Cause I thought like you had to believe that, but then like I started becoming like a Bill Maher atheist, like one of those obnoxious ones, whatever. But I remember when I was really, really like faithless, like and like not even entertained that there's anything out there. I remember like in 2005. There's like I talk about this like sometimes, right? But I think it's like I never really brought it up because I didn't think anyone would believe me, right? But like because I didn't want to believe in it. But I remember me and my friends went to like the top of my street, and this is where we would smoke joints and like have cigarettes, whatever, right? And I wasn't like high. This is like the first time this is like the first time of the fucking day that I'm getting stoned or whatever. But before I pulled on it, I remember pulling on it, and then I remember seeing a demon flying right into me, and then I started going back and forth like in a speedy way. And my friends just looked at me like, "What the fuck's wrong with you?" And I go, "I guess it's just a joint, I guess, whatever." But that always stuck with me. That like at like one of my at like maybe my most godless, that like there was an actual demon that like actually like flew into me, and I so I started questioning that in my own head. But like now, being someone that's like clinically died like 45 times because of sleep apnea. Like I can probably assure you that there is like an afterlife or something. I personally think our dream worlds are like interacting with people who are dead or like other people that are dreaming as well. So I'm very spiritual, but like I don't really like think I'm religious, if that makes sense.
It does. It makes me think way of I don't mean to exclude you, Jordan, but I don't think you've seen Guardians of the Galaxy 3. I think that's a fair assumption.
Not yet.
The rocket scene, the near-death scene for Rocket Raccoon, where he's reunited in his mind with his dead friends. And it's a deeply, deeply moving scene for this animated raccoon. Made me cry.
I cried as well, man. I try to... I was like, dude, I don't want to be crying at a dying raccoon or something like that, because like the aesthetic of that, right? But like, dude, I couldn't hold it in, like, you know what I mean? Because I was like in that position, like, you know what I mean, like multiple times in my head or whatever. You know what I mean? And
all those flashback scenes, like towards the ends of movies where like people are reunited with like either parents or I don't know, deceased like family members, they always get to me. Like even in the Iron Claw,
yeah, that one got to me too, man. I try to hold on. It makes me like, it makes you sad, but at the same time it makes you go, does that kind of exist? Because like as somebody that like has like very mentally ill and like in a depressing mind state, like I'm always questioning like like where's this all going, like you know what I mean, like I
Yeah.
like sometimes I'm like this world is getting so bad that I actually think that sometimes dying because maybe I'll go into another dimension and I'll be somewhere else wherever, like you know what I mean, like there's like a personal thought of me that like sometimes even thinks that we lived past lives and then we died in those worlds and then we were born in here, because I remember even as a kid my brain would have, and again because everything was in my mind I wouldn't like even like bring it out or question it, but now that I see like movies like Sopranos or Westworld where people are having glitches of like past lives whatever, I did wonder if like I was experiencing that because for some reason as a kid there were like glitches in my head where I was like seeing a different like I've experienced a different life form in the past or something like that. So I in my own head I always question these things. I would never bring them out because I thought we're supposed to be, because like during the early 2000s we're all moving into more of an atheist thing where we're basically rejecting any type of religion basically. But I also think that like also made us even more cold hearted, because we didn't think there would be any more consequences for like act like saying or doing like horrible things and all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Because we went, I think in the early 2000s we went really really too far, regressing, and I feel like that's happening now, whatever, and people are using like religion in this regard.
Hmm.
I'm
I
sorry. Go
No,
ahead.
I can't really say like I feel like I've been as attuned to, I don't know, like sort of a cultural attitude towards religion as maybe what you've sort of described. But I also wouldn't disagree. I suppose. I guess I would also suggest like I certainly get a lot of my sort of like concepts of the afterlife or just even spirituality through media. At the same time, I think it's important to remember anytime you see something like an Iron Claw or Guardians of the Galaxy 3 produced or whatever, The Lion King. I mean, it's done to create an emotion out of you, as a form of entertainment or as a form of you know mm, I don't know, like emotion to make you feel like you've had a worthwhile experience at the movies. And it's not to completely discount like the ideas that are like suggested by these things, but I also think it's important to realize these things are created by another person to give us like a feeling of like satisfying entertainment.
I get you. And one final thing before I don't want to go too long, whatever, and all that. I know I always mention this show, obviously, and I talk about the therapy element of it. But the other element of why like, I've been questioning also is because I guess like being in that position and wondering where all this is going, and then I rewatched obviously Sopranos, and that is another like one thing I used to hate the therapy and the dream sequences, and now I actually appreciate them more, especially because wait, I know you haven't watched it, whatever, but has Neil or Jordan, have you watched Sopranos before?
I'm
Not
sorry,
yet.
no.
Okay, well, there's a season where Tony's in a coma, and so you're seeing him in his coma dream, but the whole coma thing is his purgatory, and they're directing him to the afterlife, and he's like it's a very surreal sweet scene where he's being guided into a house, go read it with your family, you can't bring your business here with us, whatever, and he's like freaking out, and then he's like hearing a voice, and it's his daughter's voice, and then he comes out of the coma basically, right? But it's like I feel like if you don't have to watch the show, if you go on YouTube and watch dream sequences or Sopranos coma dream, you'll like understand like the freakiness of it. So I like, as someone who has sleep apnea, and like and has like felt like I'm in another world sometimes, whatever, like those scenes really have like like I didn't realize how much religious overtone of spirituality the show really actually had that I didn't appreciate before. So I guess that between the therapy and I think like because like that show it encapsulate what late 90s and early 2000s growing up with people who put like have the aesthetic of being religious, but they don't actually live what their religion is doing. It's just more for appearances. So you see the hypocritical nature of it, and I never really I never really gave it its praise like before, whatever. But now seeing what I grew up with and what society is, I can now say that like that show. That's why I keep talking about it too. I know it annoys people to death, whatever. But like that's how I look at it, I guess. And I'll leave you guys with that. I didn't want to keep talking over and over again, but thank you for letting me on for a few minutes, man. Peace out.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Hansi.
Thank you, Hansi.
There he goes, former Bill Maher atheist, and has survived death 45 times, I believe he said.
That sounds well. Yeah, I guess sleep apnea is no joke. So I mean, I hope Hansi's gotten some help with that. I guess we've talked a lot about faith, like in the form of at the afterlife and religious experience. But like, was there another sort of like definition of faith that you were hoping to maybe discuss, Jordan? Like, I guess beyond.
Not necessarily. I guess for me, this was just, let's tee up this incredibly vast topic just around the nature of belief and like how our beliefs come to us, and do we inspect them and possibly change them if it seems appropriate. And thus, especially the beliefs where we are trying to answer the unanswerable. I guess that's where I come to the term of faith, because at that point, like, we don't know. I don't know. So what else is the option other than a blind faith in the thing that we're questioning?
Well, how does it make you feel? Like, how does choosing to have faith make you feel?
I guess it's an interesting question. Conflicted, perhaps, because again, I keep coming back to but I don't really know.
Yeah.
So there's a conflict, and perhaps it's just a part of my personality where it seems harder for me to just accept a faith in some belief or assumption or solution, what have you. But also, I'm someone who at least tries to have enough humility to question everything, myself first and foremost. And that's a big foundational piece that I understand, like Judaism, to preach. Question everything, Judaism itself. And like these kind of concepts that have been presented to me in the name of Judaism has made me certainly a bit more open-minded. Again, I'm relatively ignorant to all religions, but a lot of what I guess, like the ways in which like some versions of Christianity are presented to me, it seems very top down. Like, I know what it is. I know more than you. If you don't believe what I believe or what we believe, like, then it's bad, or you're bad, or that's wrong. And trust me, there are plenty of Jewish people that act like that too. So it's not just a religious thing. It's dependent on like the people involved. But for me, it's like, why? I was going to say, like, why believe any of this to be true? And that seems like very nihilistic or chaotic. But our brain only processes so much, and we can only sense so much. So obviously, I don't want to say that none of this is real or valid, but also there is so much that exists that we just are incapable of experiencing or sensing. And I'd rather err on the side of being, let's say, optimistically curious instead of blindly believing.
Okay. I feel like even in the world of nature, I know that my cat Archie, who was around, can smell 16 times better than I can. I don't mean it smells good. I mean, his sense of smell is 16 times better. There are degrees of how we perceive the world as human beings that I think we probably don't know about. Quick question for Wai. This just came into my mind. Becoming a dad. My older brother and my younger brother both have kids. I don't, and I know it's not the same for everyone in the sense of a almost spiritual, transformative experience holding your newborn for the first time. I think a lot of people are just overwhelmed by the experience, but clearly from not just them but everybody I know, the intense love and feeling of wanting to protect and nurture, and that, you know, that sort of transformative feeling, that have any impact on your sense of, well, it's, I don't want to label you as an atheist, but I'm you know, I think you're curious and open-minded, but would that have any sense on, you know, your dreams for your son and all of that kind of thing?
Yes. Well, I mean, you can't help but you know, wonder what the person you're dedicating your life to raising is going to turn out to be, right? I like, you're asking if it has any effect on like my faith, my
I guess.
Was there a spiritual shift?
That's it.
Spiritual shift? No. Not for me, not yet, at least. For me, it was like a very sort of practical sense of like responsibility, and I think the realization that like this person's survival is dependent on me now, and it was all more sort of like those sort of feelings. I not so much like, you know, like what it is, like anything beyond that, certainly. I'm very curious to maybe speak to like another brother of mine who like when he had his son, like my nephew, he was born like a heart with a heart problem, and he's gone through like like he went through open heart surgeries as pretty much like an infant, and that amount of stress he's kind of talked to me about like several times. But I also wonder like if like that to me would have been probably an experience that would have greatly affected maybe my sort of spirituality, or maybe like dedication to faith. Right now as a parent, honestly, dude, you're so focused on like just the day to day and just managing, you know, making sure that he's eating and that you're contributing enough around the house so that, you know, your partner, you know, has enough like support, that I'm not necessarily thinking about it. So I can't say that I've kind of managed to connect those things, but somebody who might be able to speak on it a bit, maybe somebody who is not just a father, but a grandfather at that. And that is Steve Grows Weed, who's calling in from his car. I hope you're watching the road very carefully. Okay,
yeah,
good.
Especially today.
How you doing,
guys?
Steve?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I was thinking while you guys were talking that I gotten kind of like weird looks at least twice during the Christmas holidays, because I'd be talking with my wife going into a mall or something, and she had some issues at her work with putting up any kind of Christmas things or whatever in her office. They didn't allow it, so a lot of people were pissed off at that. But while we're talking, I'd be like, I wasn't even trying to be, I don't know, I was like, I don't give a fuck about Jesus. I just love, you know. And I'd say that, and all of a sudden you'd see like 6 people, especially in like a busy mall. All of a sudden everybody would look over at me, and my wife's like, will you fucking keep it down? So yeah. That's the way I look at religion.
Well, I mean, I want to follow up maybe on the question that Neil had for me to you, Steve, as you know, a father several times over. Did having children change at all, or at least affect in any way your sort of connection to faith?
No, I don't think so at all, because I was pretty set in the way I thought, like from like teens on, really. I was just like,
Can you share some of what those beliefs are?
I don't know. I kind of look at it like God is like kind of like Santa Claus. It's like it's something you believe in when you're a kid, and if you get older and you're smart enough, you'll kind of figure out that that's probably not the way it is. It was just kind of a construct to keep people in line before there was like police and government. And it's like a nice concept, and it's, at this point in time, it's a nice reason to have community and for people to get together and stuff. And as long as people aren't being judgmental, which unfortunately too many people are, it's a nice thing. It's a nice thing for a bunch of people to get together and do it, hang out, and do whatever. But I don't know. For me, it's just be a good person. You're good. You know, if there is anything other than this, it's like you'll find out then. You know.
What do you think drives you to be a good person, though, Steve? Is it just because people will be good back to you, or is there anything? You know, you're talking about organized religion. You're talking about Christianity. There,
Yeah.
I'm wondering, is there any kind of spiritual life in your experience?
Like, it's weird. It's like, because it's like I unfortunately don't feel like anything really happens after we die. Like, it's like when you go into a coma or you get knocked out. You just kind of, what that is what it is. You know, once it's gone, you know, which sucks.
So,
Sorry,
but were you the Steve in the Little Lad then?
The one that went missing? I don't know.
Huh. Maybe not.
Yeah, that was like Christianity saying we lost Steve.
So I guess your take is that when we die, it's just kind of lights out, and that's the end of the show.
I mean, I'm assuming so. Like, in all honesty, that's probably it. Do I want it to be something cooler? Of course, you know. And it's like, and there is something to like spirituality. Like, I'm not a fan of like organized religion by any means, but at the same time, it's like there's a feeling you get when you hear a certain song that it's like for whatever reason, categorize as spiritual, you know? Like when you get those goosebumps and stuff like that, or when you're in a communal setting, like I used to be a raver in my 20s, and
not really surprising.
You'd be at a party and the music's going and everybody's dancing and you just feel that communal experience. Like, you probably felt that at festivals and things like that, where there's like a spiritual vibe to that I can't ignore. You know, there's something to that, and I do feel like Neal was saying earlier about that. It's like I feel like we're more than just like a bag of flesh, you know, like with water in it. You know, like it's like there is a consciousness. There's some kind of like I do like it's like even as a guy who like smokes weed and like, you know, has done his fair share of like, you know, seeing God in certain situations. It's like it does feel like there's more out there than just this. But do I know what it is? No. Do I think there's like a measured bar that's going to get me in or out? No. You know,
but it sounds like you're saying that it would be nice to think that maybe there is something on the other side of this life that isn't a hell-like existence. But is it just for you for right now? It's hard for you to find a way conceptually to just get on board with some version of that.
Yeah, like you see some people that are so wholly devout, and it's like, in some cases it's just frightening. In other cases it's really heartwarming, you know? It's just, like, I had a friend who's a preacher, actually, and him and me, we worked together, and we used to have some really good conversations, and he was open on my side, and I was open to his side, and we'd have some really good discussions. And unfortunately, he lost his wife. He was young, and she was pregnant to a car accident. And I remember going to the service, and he came up to me, and he's smiling, and he just gives me a hug, and I hug him back, and he just looks at me, and he goes, "God is good all the time." And I just I couldn't even imagine how he could feel that way at that time, because I feel like I would just be so, as a person of with that kind of spiritual nature, I would be so angry at God in that moment, you know, so okay. It's but for me, got him through a really tough time, and I can't ignore that, you know. So
for me, that brings to mind someone like a Mark Briscoe.
Yep.
And he said as much, that this was an opportunity for his faith to be tested. And when he tested his faith, he realized that stay the course with the faith and trust that there is a plan for this, and perhaps Jamin is in a better place. And to believe that with conviction, sounds really nice, to the point where I feel envious of that.
Yeah.
But for me, like, it's harder for me to get on board with that. I also realized that I was not raised with such structure and consistency of the faith that family shares amongst each other. But I find that to be incredibly inspiring and heartwarming.
So I guess, like, to me, when I hear somebody maybe say something like that, or like, like Steve, in your case with your friend, saying, God is good, my interpretation, maybe it's probably different, for your friend, but like for me, my interpretation is very similar to somebody saying, um, our lives are predetermined, and that we are powerless to ultimately, like, perhaps map out the major sort of events of our life, and that there's no sense in dwelling on something we can't control, and we leave it up to either chance, or we leave it up to God, or whatever your definition of God is. Um, is that another element of faith? Like,
Of course.
yeah,
I mean, we debated that even like in my master's program, one of the courses. And at least for me, like here's where I don't get on board with the God thing. And when I've worked with various rabbis, this is a conversation I'll have beforehand, because part of what's meaningful for me is to understand that community's interpretation of these things, and to also feel like I have permission to share my interpretation of these things. And like, I'm not so into the idea of we give all of this power to God at the expense of our own personal responsibility. Steve, to whomever just joined, what a fucking conversation to join in on live on YouTube.
Just picking up my voice.
Hello, Mrs. Weed, I suppose.
Hi.
So I think there's a balance way where, because again, I don't like this idea of, well, I'm off the hook because this is all God's plan, so I don't need to be responsible for shit. That's pulling at like too much on one end.
of course.
But the idea that everything happens for a reason, that's helpful. There's times where I've leaned on that faith, because whatever I was going through at that time in life was either so difficult or like unexplainable that helped me cope.
Right. Saying God is good, is that not just somebody else's way of saying everything happens for a reason?
I think it is.
Yeah, exactly.
so.
Yeah, I agree. Is it weird, like, as much as I don't have all the faith that I was talking about, stuff like knocking on wood, I do that all the time.
Yeah.
And I'll look for something, so I have superstitions at least.
Yeah. Hey, we're gonna let you get to driving and taking care of Mrs. Grossweed. So, thank you, Steve,
All right,
for
cheers,
the
guys.
call. Appreciate it.
See you, Steve.
Yeah. Hey, I don't know how much this conversation may have I guess done to solve any of the world's sort of questions about something like this throughout human history, but
We did it, Wai.
yeah. Has it provided any sort of clarity, or at least like a direction maybe for your questions, Jordan?
No, but I enjoyed myself. And that's
good.
kind of the point. Why assume a 90-minute conversation or a 90-day conversation would really like move the goalposts in some significant way? These are lifelong questions to grapple with. Like, and I'm here for it. Again, like my dad's death has made it unavoidable, at least for me, because it's not that I just think about it daily. I feel it daily, and it often feels difficult and scary at times as well, especially like in my concern for his being, like the nature of his existence. Like I love him, and I am concerned about him. Also, in that same breath, there's a part of me that I guess does have a faith and a trust that like he's okay. Because for me to not have that feels so unpleasant. And again, this is where faith can like be useful and make sense to me. Why some of us believe things that sometimes seem unbelievable.
I don't think you'll ever know, Jordan. Like that the answer to the question, like, is my dad okay? If you're like, it sounds like you're looking for proof that you'll never be able to find.
But isn't that true for all of these questions that we rely on faith for?
Yeah, it is. So like, I only maybe bring it up because you're saying you're concerned, and I guess I don't really know, how you'll ever be able to satisfy those concerns if it sounds like you're looking for something definitive, and I don't think you'll ever get
but
it.
I don't know if I am looking for something definitive, because like I know I'm not going to have an answer, which is kind of the point. So part of the exercise then is inspecting my faith. It's kind of, it's talking through my beliefs. And by doing that, I'll have a clearer understanding of Jordan in January 2024. This is where I'm at with what I believe about this topic, which is probably very different from a year ago, which I know is completely different, or at least very different than 10 years ago. So I find a lot of value, at least me in particular, in talking through these issues and these circumstances. And for others, they turn to a Bible. For others, they turn to a faith leader. For others, they turn to music or poetry. For me, one of the things that I find constructive and helpful is to chat it out with people that I feel some sense of trust with. And I guess on YouTube as well.
Yeah, in front of millions and millions of strangers here at youtube.com/postwrestling, watching us live every single month here. These podcasts can be found for free in the Post Wrestling Cafe audio feed. If you go to postwrestlingcafe.com, you can subscribe to your custom RSS if you are a patron, or just simply go to postwrestlingcafe.com or youtube.com/postwrestling and listen to these shows for free. Hopefully, hey, I got something out of this, certainly. So thank you, Jordan, for introducing the topic. Neil, any thoughts on the conversation?
A valuable one, I feel. We were never, as you said, right from the beginning, going to come to any definitive conclusion. But to me, it's just keep going, keep exploring these things, see what works for you, see what doesn't. And it doesn't need to consume 24 hours of your day, but I still think it's a valuable sort of self-exploration and dive into one's relationships with other people, particularly people that we love. So
my hope is that this isn't like a bummer episode or a bummer conversation. You know, like I realize that for many people, like death is a morbid topic. I've also said many times publicly that like death is a wonderful motivator and reminder to live and to like live without regrets, like to not hold ourselves back from what we most desire or are interested in. And yeah, am I bummed about my dad? Am I still like in mourning and in grief? Like, yeah, of course. But this isn't like wholly depressing for me to explore. Again, like this stimulates a lot of like creativity and curiosity and fascination that I have. In addition to, for me, it's like a cool opportunity to connect with people that I like you guys and our listeners. So,
well, I've been very thankful for you, Jordan, you know, going through this entire process and really just kind of being an open book with your emotions, you know, and maybe that's just kind of you by nature, but like, like me, even like, I don't know if I would have like felt, I don't know, the sort of like comfort, or confidence to perhaps like, you know, talk about this stuff as openly as you have, and I think you're providing a real opportunity for people like myself, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners, to explore these very complex thoughts that maybe we want to shy away from ourselves.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. That it like, yes, I think my personality it's not shocking that I have been willing to do this in such a public way. But But it has surprised me. Again, when my dad first died, like it was not my intention to do an episode about that until it was. I have found it helpful for me. I trust in that. And I also trust that it is and can be and will be helpful for others. And that feels interesting and worthwhile too.
Thank you, Jordan. As always. And thank you, Neal, at Neal Flanagan, at Jordan Beatwell, as you can find these gentlemen. If you want to continue the conversation in any way, find them on Twitter or go to discord.com. Actually, postwrestling.com/discord is the best way of finding it. And then join the Wellness Policy channel and give us your thoughts. Leave a comment here on the YouTube video. It would be maybe one of the safe spaces to leave a comment on our YouTube channel currently. But we always appreciate it. We'll read everything, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on the entire conversation. Do we have any ideas what we'll be talking about next month, guys?
Do you?
Nope.
You're kind of into this commitment thing.
I mean, I feel like we kind of, hit on it, in some ways. It probably overlaps a lot with this conversation. So we'll let everybody know, and we're all open to suggestions. Boy, are we,
By the way, I've still been pushing for a wrestling episode.
What particular aspect of wrestling?
Like the function of it in our lives, the ways we've been like attracted to it and the meaning it has become in our existence. Like, I think there's a lot there. Okay. Like similar to the music episodes, but wrestling.
We can maybe workshop with it and see if there's something there. That sounds promising. I never thought to look at wrestling in that way. So,
well, I think I'd argue that it's one of the most significant things in each of our lives for many different reasons. And we have committed much of our limited time here, precious time of life, to professional wrestling. And at a minimum, that's kind of interesting to me.
Yeah.
Are you cool with that, Neal?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
It's an angle on the subject that, with the best will in the world isn't going to be on Rewind or Raw or something. So yeah, absolutely. Why not?
So after announcing that this is the one podcast in the Post Wrestling Network where you won't be able to hear about wrestling, I guess other than the MCU later, next month we are dedicating an entire episode to wrestling. That's going to be novel. In 4 years or 3, whatever, of the Wellness Policy's existence, we've never dedicated an episode. The real forbidden door, I would say, topics here on the Wellness Policy.
I have a feeling we might get some callers for that one.
Okay. Well, tune in next month. We will be talking about wrestling. And until that time, thank you guys all for being here. We'll talk to you guys soon. Here on the Wellness